really a pleasure to address people at Krea University, and it's a very unique pleasure because I realize that many miles away, my daughter actually would probably be sitting in a class like this right now, and she is just doing her second semester in marketing at Syracuse University in the US. So it's a little bit of a daunting task to imagine that your daughter could potentially be one of your students in a classroom, and very scary as well. So I'm sure she'd be very critical. But I think you've gone through a very, I would say, a very very strong, very left-brained, heavy kind of a day. Starting out with shift stock, which is, you know, I think it's like, someone like God talking to you guys. I mean, he's amazing. He's intellectually extremely stimulating, at the same time, very inspiring. And then you've gone through a lot of very high tech content, right? On for a Friday. So I thought, marketing at the end of it is both left and right brain. And what's also important is that as you all venture into your careers, it is really important that this is not just a bomb which is full of intellect, but there's also a very human side of the business. And I think what takes to really succeed, especially in your jobs, is not just the intellectual know-how, but how you carry that thing. And there's certain traits and aspects which I felt that if I had known when I had started off my career, I think I would have been much more successful. Now, these are not just snippets and learnings from my own career. I actually pull off it, a lot of experience and knowledge from stuff where some of my colleagues have been very, very successful. So that's where I picked up a few learnings, and I sort of put them in a bouquet of the Ten Commandments. And this goes back because the first time I did a similar talk was actually to Filipinos back in 2000. When I was a young brand manager, and I felt if I could give a little bit more direction to the Filipino brand managers in terms of what is expected from them, I think I would get much better results. The same thing I repeated, when I was heading a marketing department in Singapore, which was a regional marketing team, comprising about 30 marketeers. And I felt that if they were to get a few tips on how they were to go about looking at their career, it would be very helpful. To my surprise, the same kind of talk I gave to INSEAD students in Singapore. And this was a freewheeling talk. Uh, there also, I realized that there was a mix of people who were completely fresh, the people who had about 5 or 6 years of experience and then were pursuing their MBAs. They also found it useful. So I thought, like, why not just share this stuff with you guys as well? And I'm very happy that it's like a mix of students who are undergrad as well as graduate students, some probably with a little bit of work experience, but more to decipher what is this black hole called working, and how do you really relate that versus your own personal life achievements and dreams. Like, so I created this thing called 10 Commandments. I'm going to sort of reel this with you all, and you'll have to play this with me. I'm going to share screen and probably going to go, using the screen and getting off the screen uh, here and there. So bear with me on that. Uh, and I hope technology works with me. Can you see this?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So this is what I call as the 10 commandments as you step into your first job. So one thing, my biggest question to you all is, what do you think, when I say job, okay, what are the first couple of things which come to your mind, okay, when you think of job in the context of completing your college and then going and working? What do you think of when I say job? What is your, what are,
Deadlines, sir.
sorry?
Deadlines.
Deadlines. The second, any other thoughts?
Financial independence.
Financial independence. What other?
So the thing that we would like to do throughout our lives.
I like that. So I don't have the gallery view. Just a bit, let me just have the gallery view. Yeah, who mentioned that?
Shruti.
Yeah, great. Anybody else who's got any other thoughts?
Sir, I basically think that, yeah, go ahead.
Responsibilities.
Responsibility for what?
Sir, extra responsibilities, sir.
Extra responsibilities. Okay. So I think, I liked one of the answers a lot, because to that person, the job was not just about deadlines, about earning for a living, but was really a little bit more about what I feel should be the reason why you should actually be working. Okay. The first commandment, as you look into uh, the ghostly world or the barbarian or the monster world of working, is you should not be thinking of that as work. Especially in your context where you are not even you're ahead of the you're just Gen Z people, right? You're not even the you're not the millennials, you're now the Gen Z people. So you should be really thinking about your work more as what you're dreaming about. Okay. What are you passionate about? Okay. What are your real things which tickle you? Let me give you a couple of thoughts on this. And the people who actually succeed in life, okay, in their jobs and their work, are the people who are going to be pursuing their dreams. And let me give you a couple of examples. One of my most favorite example over here is of a guy who was reporting to me in PNG, a guy called Sumit Mehta. I can take his name openly right now. And he was, he did a great thing. He did his, I think he was with Stephens first, then he did his MBA from Ahmedabad. He joined PNG. He met a girl in PNG. He got married to her. He was a pretty bright guy. He was top rated in PNG in marketing. But somehow he just kept on playing, the usual coming to work, enjoying life, contributing to results and moving on. Then one fine day, he actually asked himself the question, which is this really what I dreamt of doing? And is this what I want to do for the rest of my career? And then he stepped back and he realized that if he looked at his background, and his background was of a guy who was the son of a professor, right? And a professor who actually was making two ends meet to really fund the education of his children. Then he realized that it is one thing which he wanted to do really well in life was to really try and give great education back to the world. Okay. And then he started really thinking. He had a job in Singapore. He was married to another PNG, so they were making decent amount of money. In fact, to that extent that I remember that they were also expecting a baby at that particular point of time. And then suddenly one fine day when his father passed away, he realized that he was not really working for what he dreamt for. And it was that particular point of time he went and came back to India, and he joined a company, which is actually ZLearn, because he was passionate about education. you know I don't think that stint of Zealand is really what he was looking forward to, but the reason for his dream of really looking and making a difference to humanity in the area of education turned his entire life of just pursuing a fun kind of a life in PhD to working towards something which he really dreamt of. And today actually he is the founder of a startup called Lead School. In fact, I was talking to him just a while ago, where he's now very well funded, and he's actually hiring people who are ex BCG, ex McKinsey, as people who are working for him and very, very well funded. And his whole sole idea now is to really democratize education and take very high levels of learning and provide them to the rest of the world. So the moment you start thinking of work as something which you have to go out and do because you want to earn a living versus as compared to what you want to achieve in life, the whole um, the whole you know the scope completely changes, and it really inspires you. Closer home, if I want to also think of my own career, and I've been lucky, to be fairly honest, to have a pretty good start in both the first careers after my education. Whether I look at Thermax, Babcock and Wilcox, which is the first job I joined in after completing my engineering, or if I look at PNG, I've had a pretty successful run. And I realized that uh, at that particular point of time, I love tinkering around with my cycle and motorcycle, and I like to turn things around. I felt engineering was the right thing for me to do. And then somewhere in the middle of engineering, I realized that my biggest actual asset was that I was able to communicate with people pretty well, and I was very good at my interpersonal skills. And then I moved into the world of sales in Thermax. And actually, I had a fantastic, fantastic sail through because I was one of the fastest uh, growth candidates in Thermax and did exceptionally well. But it was at that particular point of time when I was traveling and I realized, like 2 years in the industry, is this what I'm all about, or am I looking to something much, much bigger? And when I read a magazine and I read about this company, which was at that time Hindustan Lever, I was very, very inspired by the idea that if I were to able to convince a person when I'm one to one, what a difference I can make to humanity. if I can convince 1 billion people at a time. With that one simple dream, I tried to figure out how to join a company like Unilever or P&G, and then I pursued my MBA. So if I were to look at it, one of the biggest learnings on how you can be really successful in your job is to really identify personally what drives you and personally what you can do to try and achieve it. That's going to take you to your biggest goal. So once again, I think Shruti was the one who said it is, it is something which I look forward to or something which I would love doing. You should be looking at your jobs as something which you really want to do and want to make a difference to your own life and to other people's life. And that's the area which you want to get into, right? So that's commandment number one. Commandment number two is, it's something which, how do you define this animal or bird called owl? When I say owl, what comes to your mind first? And why do you think I'm using the word owl? It's a very famous word in PNG actually. Everybody is supposed to, in the first 2 years, everybody is supposed to attend meetings and they're all told behave like an owl. And any guesses as to why
Is it
owl?
because
Probably have a 360-degree outlook of things.
watch
Sorry?
out?
Because 360-degree outlook of things. Because owl is the only animal that can turn his head 360-degree around.
360-degree around. That's an interesting one. Any others?
Night vision, maybe it can see in the dark itself.
See in the
Dark
dark.
also.
Correct.
Basically, it is alert when the rest of the world is sleeping.
It's alert when the rest of the world. I think the most important thing, there are two things to it. Okay. One is the owl has got all the information, right? It has got all the intellect. Okay. It has got the night vision. It has got the 360 view. So I think the important part over here is that you are so deep into your business that your biggest competitive advantage actually is the information which you have got and nobody else has got. So just remember one thing: when you are actually at the first rank or the first, the starting part of your business, you are the person who's closest to the data and to the information as compared to your managers. So your biggest source of advantage is that you know everything about your business much more than your managers do. The managers have experience, okay, but you've got the information. You have got the information and you've got the knowledge as a result of that. Okay. So you are very unique. The second is the owl is a person, okay, in PhD language, the owl was a person who would be quiet most of the time, okay, and would talk only when asked to, because that person was supposed to be the wise person. Okay, while everybody else was shouting, the owl was recognized as one of the wisest animals. So the reason why it was wise was because it had all the information. And that's why you were told to keep quiet and open your mouth only because when you open your mouth, it will be oozing with information and knowledge. Okay. So this is one very important secret. While every person who joins at the lowest rung of the company feels like tormented because, all the seniors are out there and they're sitting and making all the decisions and you're doing all the spending, etc., etc. How can you make a difference? The real difference is because if you've got the knowledge, you've got the biggest power in your hands. And remember, to do that, you have to be very diligent in making sure you really understand your business very well. It's also, by the way, the only time in your lives that you can really dig so deep into the data and you have the time uniquely to yourself. So make sure you love that particular part of your life. And really, the more and more kind of time you can spend with the data, the best. One of my favorite examples on this owl on the business is actually, and this is a very interesting kind of a story because when I was in the Philippines, and I should not get too what do you call it, labelistic on this, but Filipinos in general are very well known for their creative skills, but they're not really very strongly known for their analytical or their intellectual skills, very honestly, especially by Indians. Okay, so there is that level of labeling done, which is done on Filipinos. But there was this summer intern, which I hired in the Philippines, who was a Filipino. And, I was working on diapers, and it was a pleasure working on diapers because that was the time when when we just had a first child, who was my daughter. And, there was something very strange about our Pampers business in the Philippines. which is we had very strong market shares overall on the brand across the overall landscape. We had about 30% market share. But what would happen is that our small size, baby grows, and the life of the diaper category is basically between 0 and 2 years, right? And our market share in medium size and large size was pretty high, but our market share in small size was extremely low. Okay, it is also a very, very important time, because typically, imagine if you use a diaper for the first time and you're happy with it, that is a time when you continue to stick with the thing. So it was nice because you had a good market share, but your market share was declining. At the same time, your market share in the small size segment was very, very low. And people were wondering, what is the issue? And they're saying like, you should improve the quality. There must be a quality issue on the small size diaper. But we were surprised to find one of the lowest priced diapers was actually the fastest selling one. And, I got a summer intern to dig a little bit deeper on this business. And this guy actually spent the time, to do something which none of the people in the past had done. He went through some of the usage and attitude and habits and practices study, and he found something very, very interesting. Okay, which is that in small size, okay, in small size, the frequency of changes of diapers was much, much higher as compared to large size. Okay, and it was especially very, very high in terms of frequency of changes in the 0 to 2 months kind of age group. You know, and we were wondering, that would be true, but why so uniquely? Other babies like excreting more during that particular point of time. And then if I were to put it in parallel with some of my own personal experience, then you realize that actually the baby in the first 2 months actually tends to use and excrete much more in the first 2 months as compared to the rest of the thing. So what happens is that even if you put one of the world's best quality diapers, it doesn't get used for too long. So what is happening is that any consumer, any mother really feels that even if you get the best quality diaper at that particular point of time, it is not being put to its stringent test, right? So what we did was at that particular point of time, we cut the price of the diaper. We did not improve the quality further because we realized that's not what the consumer really needed. And as a result of that, our market share has really increased. Now, if you look at this is a great example of how, if people who are wise were to look at it, they would just keep talking about improve the quality of the diaper. But that does not solve the real issue of the brand. Okay. The issue was solved only by that summer intern over there who took the pains to go through the data and find out what the real consumer issue was. So being the owl on your business is going to get fantastic results and something which you can uniquely do. Okay, so that's commandment number 2. Commandment number 3 is what you measure in your own mirror is what you will achieve. This is a very, very interesting one. And, I think it goes into, have you all heard of this topic called KRAs, key result areas? In terms of what are your objectives and goals and all that kind of stuff. Has anybody heard of that? Well,
Yes, the
basically,
same as KPIs.
KPS, key performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Key performance indicators. Yeah.
Performance indicators. Now, what is interesting is that when you start working, what's good about it is that typically when you start working and you're given a work plan, so to speak, or what you are actually supposed to achieve, you're also given key performance indicators, right? Especially because people who are new to the business or new to the industry need to be guided on what you want to achieve over there. But I think one important thing over there is to really see what is your own measure as compared to what the organization has put for you as a measure, and that will also lead me to the 4th commandment, if I'm right, and I'll come to it in a second, which is when you get your KPI, very often, especially when you join a company new, it's very difficult to understand exactly what is expected from you. So I think the important part is to really figure out and identify what exactly is expected. I'll give you as an example. Typically, if you want to join a company, like if you want to join a big consumer goods company or any company in marketing, typically you'll be put on a brand, okay? And the expectation would be like, there is this event over there, and or for example, we are launching a new product, and the product is extremely superior. So you're an ABM on say Tide in India, and you have to uh, do a massive sampling program so that consumers can experience the product. And once they've experienced the product and you sell them at a slightly cheaper price, then they'll feel that the product is really good and I should go ahead and buy it. Okay. So you'll be put in an activity like that. You know, what is you'll be given is that, you need to make sure that you drive this successfully. The execution should be perfect. What you need to specifically step back and really ask at that particular point of time is, what is the objective behind that entire exercise? So when you go out and sample, it is not just the activity which is important, but the result which is extremely important, which is to find out what is really expected as a result of that activity. Um if you want to go down and really dig deep, you know, is the experience of the product demonstration going to be good enough? I'll give one example on this one in hair cleaners as a categories, in hair shampoos, where we worked upon and where we had launched a product called Pantene Lively Clean, and in South India, you have uh, a case where a lot of consumers actually oil their hair, and there is a very unique product which we had launched, which actually, without spoiling the quality of the hair, actually removes the oil from the hair so that consumers feel that it's squeaky clean. And we had put an ABM on that particular job and really expected a fantastic execution of the plan. And when we realized that when she was actually doing the demonstration, the consumers were not getting the superiority of the product very well. Okay. And she found that the core issue was that they did not actually personally experience that it could actually clean the oil on the hair, you know. And also to do that particular activity, that she would get into a very tough exercise of trying to show like hair getting oiled and washed. So she came up with a very, very innovative plan, okay, which is, she said that the comb which is used by consumers is very similar, and you could put oil on the comb of the consumer, and actually when you strip the comb out, you can actually smell whether the oil is still there or not. And when she showed the actual demonstration on the comb of the product, she realized that she was getting much better consumer acceptance in terms of the oil getting removed from the comb and hence the hair. So she looked at how she could get that product experience in much bigger set with the consumers, and that was a massive, massive thing. So I think the bigger thing is, when you're actually given a task, really figure out exactly what is expected from you and excel from that. Okay. And in that particular case, think of what you are expected as a result and not just in terms of an activity. Because if you just focus on the activity that you have to go out and actually just do the sampling of the product, you're not going to get the kind of results which you really want, right? The next one is, one of the things which I found is that uh, in an organization, what happens is that typically you have to come in and make your mark, and you will find that as a young, person who's there employing the organization, you will find there'll be a lot of pressure to perform, okay, and there'll be a lot of ideas which will be thrown at you. I think the important part is really to sift which are the ideas which are small and which are really big, because at the end of it, it's only the big ideas which will make a big difference to the business. Okay, so really segregate to see and work with your managers to find out which are the big ideas which are going to make a big difference to the business as compared to the small ideas, right? Next, the other thing is, I've also realized, and this is a little bit linked to the next one, okay, which is, very often, when you are in an organization, okay, and you are really at the lowest rung, it is very difficult for you guys to get the guts to come up and actually communicate successfully. Okay. uh, what is really important is recognize that communication is going to be the most important thing in your careers as you go out over there, because even if you do something well, there'll be a lot of people over there who will talk much better. So what is really important is that you work with your managers to find out what is really going to communicate the work which you've done most successfully, and make sure that people are completely aware about what is going on your project, right? very often I found that there are, uh, you're working on a lot of different projects at one particular point of time, and you find that you get bogged down in a lot of detail, and you find that there are issues cropping up everywhere. Okay, people are very scared, and one of the things which I have found is especially Indians as a community find it very, very difficult to share that when there are issues arising. Like for example, you come in multifunctional teams, right? And there are teams from other areas apart from marketing, like for example finance, or if you look at any other manufacturing, etc., etc. And you'll find that your project is not moving fast enough. You will find that it is much, much better that if you are constantly communicating to your seniors, and you're communicating to your team, and you're identifying issues, and you're bringing up issues quickly and constructively, you will make the project much, much faster. Because a person, if they're hiding any of the issues, okay, then what happens is that these issues tend to surface much, much later, and they become very, very big and becomes unsolvable. Okay, so it's very important to communicate and to surface issues quickly. The next one is, marketing is considered to be a very, especially when you look at it from people from the other functions. Like if you look at functions like finance, or you look at manufacturing, they keep talking about marketing as something which is puffery, which is only about advertising, it's only about communication. I think the important part is you need to understand that marketing is an art, but it is inspired by science. So, like for example, there are both sides of the coin, and I think you've had a very, very strong day in terms of the amount of technical thinking which goes into marketing. If I were to look at the fundamentals of marketing, if you look at the fundamentals of trial, repurchase, consumption, you will understand that marketing is not purely a science, but it is also an art. So you need to understand that you have to inspire the other functions, because unless you inspire the other functions about the potential behind an idea, especially if you look at functions like finance, you're not going to be able to get spending or funding behind your idea. So you need to play both sides of the game pretty well, right? The next one is, um, it is extremely important that just being the owl, like I said, it's not just important to know about the business, but important to communicate it. Because very often you'll see that your boss will be having many other people who will be reporting to them along with you. Okay. And it's extremely important that you are able to communicate quickly, because if you don't force a decision at the right time with your boss will go ahead and take a decision. And remember, at the end of it, the boss has got multiple projects which are going, right? So he's got like a portfolio of ideas. And if there are a portfolio of ideas proposed by a portfolio of ABMs, and if he plays the entire portfolio, if you're one of the ABMs who is not able to force a decision on your part of that project, then you're going to miss out on the funding. So it is really important that you force a decision to your boss. Otherwise, what will happen is you'll be left on the wayside, right? And the last part over here is, and this is important, I guess, I'm speaking to people who actually practice it. And one thing which I've seen over here is that the new age tends to understand the importance of balance. And it is important to understand that you lead a life, which is not only about hard work, but about smart work and about doing something which you really dream of. So I think, you need to find out as you go into the organization, how do you understand its processes really well, okay, to make sure that you leverage the industry and the processes and the company, so that you're not running around like, like a hamster in a wheel continuously, and you're making sure that you're actually using the system to push some of your own projects. So those were the couple of tips, and I think as you start going into the outside world, you'll probably find it a little bit more simpler to understand. And there are a couple of thoughts which I thought I'll share with you on a Friday afternoon. So I think the most important thing is really make sure you understand what your dream is all about. Make sure you find a job which is in sync with your dream. Okay. Second is you be the wise person, on your project, and really be a proponent of what you want to push. Third is leverage the system very, very smartly, okay, so that you push your decisions Fourth is communicate really, really strong across the organization and bring up issues quickly, so that you can push your projects faster. And always think of the end results in mind. And last is you need to make sure that you have a very good balanced life. It's not only about hard work, but how do you use the entire organization's wheels to push your projects and priorities better, right? There are a couple of tips I thought which I had for you, and we can probably just leave it as a question answer session beyond this. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chetan, for the wonderful session. In fact, I curse myself for not listening to someone like you when I joined my first job. Especially if someone would have taught me about decision forcing, which is something, it's an eye opener for me as well. It's a wonderful thing, and also about the owl thing, which is extremely new to me. And in fact, I remember one of the incidents which had happened in my life when I started my career. One of my one of the bosses told me this: 60% of the perception you create about yourself to the others is by communicating what you do, right? So that is what precisely you spoke about in the middle. So I was really enjoying it. I hope the other students also were enjoying it. I am sure that the floor is now will be loaded with a lot of questions. Let it be the questions from the participants and also from the regular audience. I leave it to you. By the time they were thinking of some questions, I would like to ask you one thing.
Sure.
When we are talking about the communication, or probably communicating yourself more about you to the boss, what is the frame line for it, in the sense to what extent I can go and communicate about myself to the boss? Would it be looking at boasting myself to him? So this can actually be a question for the budding students, I feel.
Sure. This is a very good question, because, there are two sides to this. One is you want to make sure you get enough, time and space with your boss. At the same time, you don't have over interaction with your boss, because if you have the right level of interaction, especially when you're starting, we just say once in a day, like say in the morning, you quickly talk, especially in the first couple of days or couple of months of you starting work, right? If you have a start your day with your boss and exactly be clear about what you're going to achieve in that particular day, and then allow yourself the time to be able to do it, that's going to be helpful. But if you want to go to your boss all the time, remember at the end of it, either they'll find that the boss feels that you need more hand holding, okay, and that you can't be left alone. At the same time, you will not have enough time to be able to think. So as you progress, obviously in the organization, you should probably start initially with first understanding expectations very clearly, what exactly need to be delivered, and probably start off with a what we call a one-on-one, or with your boss, which is a face-to-face with your boss, to understand what the expectations and what you plan to do for the day. As you progress and you get that kind of responsibility clear and people are more comfortable, then you could move to once in 2-3 days or once in a week. And the important part over here is not just to leave it as something which you would do thing, but to keep it in the calendar. You have to recognize that your boss is not just simply waiting for you to approach him or her, right? You need to make sure that you find time in that person's calendar and do it proactively. A thing which many people miss, especially amongst us Indians, is we don't tend to be very systematic in our own working style. So we expect that whenever we need a boss, the boss will be available. Okay. But if you're more proactive in fixing that every day at about 10 o'clock in the morning, once you're done with your basic planning tasks, I would love to spend about 15-20 minutes with you. You will be very, very clear in terms of identifying that space. Okay. Once you progress further, you can start off with every week, say Monday mornings, I would like to spend about half an hour, 45 minutes reviewing all the projects and the progress on the projects and updating you. The second tip on that is when you're talking about meeting your bosses or your managers, right? Don't focus only on doing activities. You remember one of the commandments over there was think results. Okay. So don't focus on these were things which you asked me to do, and this is what I've done. Think about these are the results which I wanted to achieve, and these are the activities I've done to achieve the results. Because what happens is tomorrow when it comes to your actual performance appraisal, your activities will not be important. but the results of the activities will be measured. And if you talk more about the results versus the activities, if tomorrow his manager asks, like, what is Rashi been doing over the last couple of months, right? So then the boss is able to say, okay, fine, Rashi and I've been, looking at and reviewing our projects, and I realized that over the last 6 months, she's actually able to turn around X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and that's been able to contribute to the overall efficiency or productiveness of the business unit. Or for example, Sukanya goes and says, like, at the end of the day, after finding that there was an issue which I wanted to fix, suppose like there's a cost upspend in a particular project, I met you a couple of times. I identified there were 4 areas which need to be corrected. And as a result of that, these are the steps which I took. And this led to this difference from a business standpoint. That person is going to be able to talk to your boss, the boss's boss about it, right? And so your results get a little bit more communicated in the organization. So I think that's a great question. And you should be very, very systematic, and you should be very clear about what you're trying to achieve in those meetings.
Wonderful. Thank you. We have another question from one of the attendees. What are the career options do we have beyond sales and distribution? All the time when we talk about marketing, we talk only about sales or distribution or advertisement. Anything do we have beyond this?
Sure. I think some of the areas which I'm very passionate about, by the way, which are, I think, relatively overlooked, is as you look at the industry and the way it is moving. Okay, just give you an example. You look at an Apple and you look at a Samsung. What is the difference between brand Apple and between brand Samsung right now? If I were to ask this question to anyone, like when I talk about an Apple, if I talk about
sir,
iPhone,
if I can.
yeah, go ahead.
Sir, I think the customer segment both are targeting. Apple usually targets the top end segment. Samsung has products for everyone's pockets. They are penetrating the market in every segment, be it for high end customers, be it the flagship phones. But Apple is like, we will just stay at the top and we're going to deliver it only to those.
Yeah. So I think if I were to look at India, you're absolutely right. But if I were to look at the Western world, there aren't too many differences between an Apple and Samsung from a pricing. You're right that generally Apple tends to play more in the premium space, whereas Samsung tends to play in the masstige and like the lower price tiers. But the biggest difference of Apple products in general as compared to a Samsung or any other company is what you call the user experience, right? So one of the very fascinating words which I feel which is going to get much, much more predominant going in the future, and not just about sales and marketing as a future for marketing students, is the whole area of user experience and brand design and user interface. I think that's going to be a very fascinating world. So the whole idea about how can you get a user experience in different kind of products or services. User experience is such an important aspect now in food delivery systems, right? So I think this area is going to be a very, very important area apart from that traditional sales and marketing thing. The other area which I feel is going to be a big area for future is all about sustainability. If you look at the whole march, if you look at FMCG also, which is very surprising, if you look at what big companies like Levers and P&G are now heading towards, it's not about how do I make the detergent clean better. It's not just that. Or how do I get the fragrance on your cloth coming out much better. One of the biggest areas which people are going after is sustainability, which is how much less water do I consume, okay, while washing your clothes, okay? Or how can I get the packaging to be much more sustainable and environmental friendly? So that area is also another very big area. So when I look at marketing, and I think this is a little bit to the talk which Shiv gave in the morning also, marketing is not only about, sales or communicating anymore. Marketing at the end of it, the whole definition of marketing is what? Is really to identify consumers' needs and unmet needs and meet them in a better way, which is not just good for them, but good for society. So if I were to look at elements like user experience or how does marketing be a force for good, these are areas which are going to be like fascinating in the future. So instead of just pursuing careers in normal humdrum sales and marketing, I think these areas. The third is the use of technology in marketing, and it's not just about digital marketing. It's about fulfillment. It's in the area of logistics. It's the area of personalization. There are a lot of very fascinating areas of marketing which is going to be very, very different as compared to the traditional jobs which people want to get into during my times.
I think Shravan has raised a hand, is it? Was there somebody who raised
Yeah, if I may go ahead. Hi, sir. Thank you very much for the talk. I had a question more related to getting into the job market in the first place, right? Now, if I'm a student who is looking to enter the job market, how do I look for the organization fit? Because each organization has a different culture, and some of it is healthy for you, some of it is unhealthy for you, and I also have to be able to fit into it. So, what would be some of the indicators as a student that I should look out for, either during the interview or before going into the interview, when I am looking to enter the job market in general?
Yeah. So I think there are two or three things. One is the most important thing is for you to be aware of your own self, okay, and what you want to really achieve. So I'll skip the part which I have spoken about, which is self-awareness, which is about your dreams and all. So I won't repeat that, but really be aware about what your own strengths and weaknesses are. Okay. So I find that what is happening is that, and probably it's becoming different now in your age, is that normally what would happen is, there's a herd of companies which come, you sit through the entire placement, and then after that you sit and hope for the best, and you land up 2 or 3 jobs, and then choose between one or two of them, right? And typically your institution's name carries you well, and you find one job and you sort of go towards it. The other way to look at it is what really excites you. Okay, really find out much more and deeper about that. Okay, and don't necessarily look through the traditional campus placement path only. And I'm not saying that this should be the answer for 80% of the people in the institute. No, because at the end of it, not everyone will know what exactly he or she wants to do. Frankly, look at me. I did Thermax as a job and then went to consumer products to find my real calling, right? Which is getting into consumer products and making a larger difference. But if you feel that you have got a passionate area of interest, okay, which has got something very, very different as compared to what the placement scene has to offer, I think it is well within your right to look at your faculty and probably some of your placement and your corporate cells, maybe Kala or someone over there, to try and identify other particular companies which can help satisfy your interest in your thing. The other thing which I would really urge, and I don't know how much the institute can help you or whether you should really talk to some more senior people, is what really interests you and what excites you. What is something which keeps you going, for which you feel you would like to spend 70 to 80% of your time doing. Okay. Or for example, how can you convert one of your hobbies into an employment area? I personally feel that in our times, probably I would reckon that only 5 or 7% of the people would convert their hobbies into their actual profession, right? During my times. But my sense is in your generation, there would be a larger, about 25 to 40% of the people who could actually look at your hobbies or your interests and convert them into a full-time profession. I think the opportunities are much higher. Don't be limited only by what the institute offers. Okay, try and look beyond. I can give a couple of examples over there, but I don't know how relevant. So we can probably have a separate talk, on this particular one, and I'd be very happy to guide you. But I have guided.
Thank you very much, sir.
I think Ananya has raised her hand as well.
Sure.
Ananya, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for the talk. So I think one question I had was from the first point that you said, about following your dream, and even now, like based on Shravan's question about self-awareness. And I think I just wanted to ask that as like a 19-year-old, as a 20-year-old, what would be your best advice to kind of, maximize these years to, harness that path of self-awareness? What would be the best way to kind of explore, and your advice as to, how you could make the best, and not just make the best of the opportunities that come your way, but also find opportunities to find this out. Because again, it's not just about like maybe like getting an internship in like these multiple areas and then figuring what you like, but would you have any tips as to like what you can do in your everyday life or anything else as to how to just increase this kind of basically catalyze this process?
Yeah. So I think there are two or three things. One is, I don't know if the institute can facilitate that. I remember in SPJ and Kala would remember that we did go through a process which is called AdMap at that particular point of time. But typically, an institute does run self-awareness kind of workshops. Where typically you try and find out what is a thing which excites you from the innermost heart, right? And it's not only about hobbies; it could be a purpose, right? And the other thing is, it is not something which you will discover only in the institute. That is the other thing. It's not something which you will discover only during the time of this institute. You may not discover it for the next 5 or 10 years, but you just have to be aware about it. You might end up being the 70-80% people who go through the entire stream of stuff, right? Go through education, etc., and later understand. Like the example which I gave you of Sumit Mehta, right? Whose father was a professor, and only when he died, he realized that his real dream was to provide education, right? And his calling came only when he was about 34, 35 years old. Okay. But I think the important part is try and see what you really are passionate about, what you really like spending time on. Okay. Where nobody has to force you to do that. Okay. It could be an interest. It could be something to do with philanthropy. It could be something to do with, music. I don't know whether it's the right thing to say, but my son he can spend 80% of the time playing the guitar, right? And he's a pretty grade 8 student, right? And at the end of it, as a result of that, his creativity is very strong. It also happens that he's very strong in maths. Okay. Actually, if he were to put enough effort, I feel he could be one of a real big innovator. But this is not my place to crib about my son. But I think the important part I want to take as an example over there is that if he were to tomorrow set up something using his keen interest in maths and computer sciences, and he finds a way of using artificial intelligence to impact the music industry, can you imagine what he could do? So I think it's difficult for me to take from you what you know, but if you can find out for yourself what are your passions and interests, and I can quote from my son because I know him pretty well, right? But I would love to guide him into that direction, right? While we might traditionally push him into like, you got to be a comm science graduate, you need to go into an Ivy League, and you need to excel in XYZ. Okay, in the back of my mind, I have that maybe 5 or 10 years, once he's proven that, I would want him to love to see how computer science can impact the music industry and how can he make a living out of that. Because that would be achieving his dream, achieving his calling. But so my sense is, through the institute or through reading up, you could try and find out what is really your calling, and then try and see what are the technical aspects which the institute gives to you, and use both to find out what your direction should be. I think that could be probably one area.
I'll quickly add there, Chetan, before Abiral, of course, has to. I mean, one of the things we do, and we think, of course, it's a completely different. You have MBA graduates who've been through the 3 years and much more sorted in terms of what they want to do. They all want to make a mark in the business. Undergraduates are still toying, and we do try and look at a sense of purpose and sense of impact. How is this something that we can get them on early and very clearly follow that. We've all been through Dr. Shrikant's grind, but at the end of the first year, students do a social impact immersion in whatever way possible to see, is that a calling somewhere, and it's to embed, and it may not happen immediately. What probably we did will come back to us 10 years later after you graduate or whatever. But what we do though is hand-holding a little bit in the undergraduate space, is talk with every student on what their interest is, and work the plan and try and curate. And the career services at the MBA school does the bit about what kind of aspirational companies. So I guess the process is very different when it comes to the undergraduates and the postgraduates. But what we often entertain is keep your eyes and ears open and look for jobs with bring multidisciplinary opportunities, because that's the only way you can actually succeed in the workplace.
Yeah, actually, I just want to add over here one thing, which is one of the little known facts is in India. If you really see, if you really look at the masses, India is not a working class. India is a land of entrepreneurs. If you look at the Kiranas, actually those people are not people who went through the normal education, etc., etc. Most of them want to do business. Why are Gujaratis so strong in building businesses? Because it's their second habit or their second nature. That's not something which they went through in their learning. It was their interest and their previous history which then drove them into a business, right? So if you talk about the whole startup land right now, if you really see India, it was the land of startups fundamentally. If you look at the whole Kirana stores, it's only India which is so different as compared to the rest of the world, where the Kirana population is so huge even today, right? So you don't have to follow the rat race.
In fact, in connection to that, one of our attendees has asked this question: how can marketing help a liberal arts student? In fact, you were talking about multi-shifting the industry and stuff. I think you can also throw some lights on the question which has been asked. I think it's relevant because many of the participants are from the liberal arts as well.
Mm-hmm. So marketing first, I'll just repeat what Shiv said over here. Marketing is not, if you think of marketing only as a way you have creative communication with very interesting and creative stuff being thrown on, that's not really what marketing is. Marketing should be looked at as a force for good, right? It should be looking at what the consumer needs are, what the society needs are, and how do you find solutions to meet those needs. Okay, so to me, there's a very intrinsic link between liberal arts and marketing. Okay, because you can't just think of marketing as a selling activity or a communicating activity. You have to think of it as a process. Okay, which it involves all elements. So in the previous world, yes, you're absolutely right. The marketing skills were all about, how do I communicate this aspect of the product much better? How do I drive superiority of that very thing? But to me, now driving change in mindsets is still a marketing kind of a thought. And it's not a marketing task, it's a marketing thought. So how to drive a movement around sustainability? I feel that a marketing student should be able to drive that much, much stronger as compared to any other specialist, right? That's what my personal point of view.
I know that we are running short of time, but still we have hand being raised. I will go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Hello, good evening, sir. Sir, this question a bit off the topic, but I thought that this is my best chance to ask this question to you, belonging from Reliance Retail. So, sir, my question is that we have seen that how the FMCG industry has gone through this pandemic situation, which was a very tough one when it comes to consumption and everything was low. And given that we are also hearing from various healthcare organizations that such virus may continue in the future. So, sir, as you being a head of your business, what are some concrete steps which you could think of as by this experience of the pandemic, which will make sure that the sales or the sales part is not hit that badly when such things, if it happens again? If you could throw some light on that one.
Yeah, sure. So I think you have to go back to some of the fundamental basics of marketing, right? And I think the answer to every company would be different, right? The answer which I gave in the context of Reliance, the good thing is Reliance actually has a very good run during the pandemic, right? So that is fortunately or unfortunately true, right? Because at the end of it, it's only the oil to chemicals business which suffered mildly, but the geo business did extremely well. Look at retailing, yes, you're right, the electronics suffered, but the grocery retail business did extremely well. But I think forget the specific business on Reliance. I think the most important thing is that as far as humanity remains, the need for certain consumption of certain things, whether it's products or services, will always be there. Tomorrow, at the end of it, you've got to consume food, right? You have to consume entertainment. You've got to consume healthcare products, right? So there will be something which needs to be consumed fundamentally, right? And the key question is, as a result of the pandemic, what is going to be the impact on that level of consumption, and what are the pivots which you need to take to make your business really improve as a result of the pandemic. So if you look at some of the examples, one of the very interesting examples, and since it's a Friday evening, I should give this example. Okay. If you look at one of the business which has done gloriously well in pandemic, have you heard of FN Good? FN Good is a beer, this concoction machine, right? It used to sell these machines, okay, where you pour water and you get beer, correct? It's a beer distilling kind of a machine, right? FN Good's whole proposition at one particular point of time was you were able to come into the pub and they would serve freshly brewed beer to you. Okay. Now, typically for that think of the kind of things which are going against it, right? For person to do well, for the business to do well, consumers have to come to FN Good, which is a particular restaurant. Okay. Then they have to have people over there who convert and create your freshly brewed beer and then give it away. What happened was that people, they completely changed the whole mechanism of delivery, and they actually converted that into a delivery service, and they actually pivoted and took a change in the entire business model, and they grew 35% business results as a result of the pandemic. So I think the key question is, what do you identify? The consumption time has changed, but the core business, if you identify the thing and what changes you need to make to the business to drive the results, you can move the entire business to that particular thing. Another example I feel in my closer to home in the consumer products industry, if you look at Godrej Consumer Products, which is one of my previous companies, I'll be honest with you, it was not going through one of the best times, or I would say in the last 3 or 4 years. There have been large scale changes in the environment. It's predominantly a household insecticides business, and that category has been going down a lot because of the Swachhata movement of the Prime Minister. But so the industry size has gone down. But as a result of the pandemic, they shifted the entire focus on the business to more about health and hygiene products, okay, and to other products, okay, and they pivoted the business, and they are now exiting the pandemic much better as compared to pre-pandemic. So they've used this particular uh, phenomenon to actually move to where the consumption is, and as a result of that, they've been able to tide and actually do much better post-pandemic. There are many good examples out there, but I think the key to find out is, as long as humanity remains, right, consumption will happen. The key question is, how is the consumption habit changed, and what is the venue? As a result of that, things will change completely. You look at Swiggy, about how it has actually pivoted. It has done a lot of good things during pandemic. So every industry would be different. So it really depends on which specific industry you talk about.
Thank you
Okay,
so much, Chetan. So before I pass this to Kala, I would like to tell you that this session has given a lot of insights. I think this session is not only for the people who are going to the job for the first time, but it has given a lot of insights for everyone who had attended it. And I should wholeheartedly thank you for doing this on a Friday late evening, which I know it is very difficult. And being in the industry, you would certainly be looking forward to the weekends, and you spent that, which is really appreciable. We would certainly call you back again for either virtually or on campus for a good lecture. And also, we won't forget to invite Madam as well, which we discussed yesterday. So thank you so much for the wonderful talk. I will pass this to Ms. Kala.
Thanks. Thanks, Satya. Thank you, students. Actually, I know there's a few of you that I pulled in, and what I'd really like, Chetan, at some point is, one is, is what you gave us 10 commandments, but at some point, maybe what were the 5 big challenges, scenarios that you faced at work, and what really happened would be just as an interesting engagement for definitely the business students at some point, because how and when any of these 10 commandments actually come handy. And I'm sure it's come out of experience, and where that came up for you would be very interesting. And thank you so much. I mean, as you know, this is just your first interaction, but we do look to continue to all of that. We look to, of course, working with in your role at Reliance, and our focus around everything around data, customer insights, marketing, as we know, we moved away from making profit and inside out approaches to, we've gone to shared value and the social responsibility of marketing, which now, and the customer insights and metrics we're talking about. So it's been a dynamic day of listening to a lot of this, but this session was just exclusively Krea. It was just meant to be a conversation breaker. And maybe, there can be a time when we'll have a little group of a few of you actually come and talk to the students a bit about each of your personal professional challenges, your personal stories of professional challenges and how you overcome them. And that will be immensely useful. Thank you. And my thanks for Ritika for sparing you on a Friday evening as well. I highly appreciate it. And thank you, students, for your time. Deeply, deeply appreciate the time that you gave us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, I really appreciate it.